the day I went, I waited in line, I get to the guy, I'm about to get stamped out, and he's like, try again. Try again? I've never tried to leave a country, and the guy says, try again. He said,
focus, man.
I was able to explore a little bit of the downtown. I got to see the University of Burundi, which is a long walk if you're coming all the way from Kabando, at least 40 minutes. I unwisely decided to do this in the middle of the day, and there was the hottest sun possible. And you know, brother did get a little bit tanned, a little bit extra tanned there. You probably can't see it right now, but yeah, the sun rays were definitely pretty intense there around midday. So you want to duck into a shop if you can and avoid that part of the day. Get a hat, get something to cover you. But you know what? I was actually shocked. I saw a Chinese woman, you know, very, very pale, and she was walking in the middle of the day. Of course, she had her visor, you know, that full visor, had the big shades and everything to keep that, you know, that lighter complexion. I'm sure she was living there and was not a tourist just by her mannerisms and stuff. So she was well prepared for what the sun was going to do. Now, speaking of the poverty and the hype that people have about, oh, it's the poorest country in the world, $5 is going to last you 50 years here. That's not true. That is definitely not true. Now, yes, there is poverty. You will at some point be followed by street children. If you're a foreigner, especially if you're filming, but even if you're not filming, they're gonna spot you a mile away and they're gonna approach you and try to ask for money. Doesn't matter if you're a black foreigner, doesn't matter if you're a white foreigner, Chinese foreigner, they know you're foreign. They know you have more money than them because you're foreign, right? Nobody comes to Burundi broke. I think that is not a controversial thing to say. Nobody comes to Burundi broke as a foreigner. You know, if you're in Burundi, it's because you're there for tourism, you want to go on some kind of trekking, you're there for investment, you're not there looking for a job on the local economy. So that being said, speaking about foreigners in Burundi, so you may be surprised, but there are actually a good amount of Chinese in Burundi owning shops. So I was in the center of Burundi in the downtown area, and I was looking for a large supermarket. I wanted to compare what a large supermarket, large mall looks like in Burundi versus what it looks like in Rwanda. Now, the largest one that I could find was right in the center, and it was owned by a Chinese person. I was kind of surprised to see that. At this point, I shouldn't probably be surprised to see East Asians living in East Africa, but I still was. And it really struck me that this is the world's poorest country, supposedly. And here we have somebody that came from the ends of the earth. You know, you can't get much farther than China to Central Africa. And this person was able to come, an outsider, come to the country, not speaking the language, and was able to create a thriving business in a place that would be unattractive to a lot of people to set up shop and have a business. So this really just highlights to me that you can make it anywhere. You can have excuses, you can have a myriad of reasons why you don't think you could thrive in a particular environment, but here's a guy who definitely can't blend in, definitely doesn't speak the language, and was still able to come there and make it work. A lot of people might be turned off by the fact that this is the the poorest country in the world, but he was able to get $1 out of the poorest people because his customers are not foreign customers. His customers were everyday Burundians. So let that sink in for a minute. Now, that being said, beyond the Chinese, there are also Indians. There are many Indians who own restaurants, hotels in the country. So them too, same thing. They don't blend in. They weren't born speaking the local language, but they saw opportunity and they were able to pull something out of nothing, essentially. So let that sink in as well. Now, I'm gonna get off that, that topic, and I'm gonna speak more about what I saw when I was in the country. The people, despite this being the poorest country in the world, do not think that everyone is walking around in rags. Everybody is malnourished. That was not what I saw in the capital. Now, of course, that exists. That exists almost everywhere in the world. You have huge inequalities. Now here, the inequalities were much more obvious. It was much clearer that I could see somebody pull up in a Land Rover, a local Burundian, not a foreigner, wearing a three-piece suit, Italian, Italian dress. They've got a Swiss watch on, patent leather shoes, just looking like $1 million bucks, looking like they could have stepped out of a Land Rover in Paris, in DC, anywhere else, and juxtapose that to an environment where a lot of people are living off, let's say, $1 a day or less. That really hits you. It's hard not to see that. But there are definitely people in this country who are making money, whether they're locals or foreigners, and you have a lot of people in this country that are suffering. So I think it's important to acknowledge that entire picture of what's going on and not just think you're going to land in a country full of huts and villages where nobody is doing well. No matter where you go, someone is always doing well. In wartime, someone is always doing well and someone is always doing really badly or really poorly, okay? So it's important to be aware of that dynamic. And it exists in the States as well. It exists in England as well. The difference is that we don't let our poor get too poor. And here, there is no bottom as far as how low you can go as far as poverty. And I guess on the opposite side, there really isn't a ceiling of how much money you can get in these countries because the corruption, I'm sure, is off the charts. I witnessed some corruption as soon as I got into the country. So I'm sure at the higher levels, it could blow your mind. But I can't really speak too much on that because I don't have that experience. So I'm gonna leave that alone. Now, the food in Burundi, I gotta say it. People are gonna get mad, they're gonna get offended, they're gonna leave me hater comments. Go ahead, do your worst. But the food in Burundi was bad. The food I had in Burundi was bad. Now, your mama at home, she might be making something amazing, but that's not what a tourist is gonna have. A tourist is gonna come to the country, they're gonna spend a week, maybe a little bit more at most, and they're gonna eat at tourist restaurants. They're going to eat at their hotel. So that's what I'm critiquing right now. The food at every hotel when I went to, and I went to more than one hotel, the food was bad. It was very bad. And it wasn't cheap. So don't think you're gonna come here, you're gonna have a Western style establishment and you're gonna be able to eat for $2 a day like some of these other non-African YouTubers might try to hype up this country. I lived here for $5 a day and I didn't know how to spend it. I stayed here for $100 a month and I couldn't spend the money. This country's so cheap, it's so poor. Nah, it's all cap. I'm not gonna give you any cap on this channel, on this video. I'm gonna keep it a buck with you, right? So for a typical meal in the hotels, in the restaurants, in the nicer parts of the city where most tourists are gonna eat at, are gonna be about $8 to $14 a meal. Now, I know this is shocking. It's supposed to be the cheapest country in the world, well, the poorest country in the world. But you gotta think, poorest doesn't always equal cheapest. Now, I've been to Madagascar, and Madagascar is very, very poor, but it's a lot cheaper than Burundi when it comes to eating out in restaurants. And the quality that you get there is better than what you get in Burundi. The same can almost be said for Rwanda. Rwanda isn't as poor as Burundi. It isn't as poor as Madagascar, but the food, the value for money in the nicer restaurants is going to be probably cheaper than Burundi, if not the same price, but the quality of the food is going to be better. And I'm sure that's for many reasons, right? You get more imports coming into an island like Madagascar. You got more imports coming into Rwanda, which is a little bit closer to the coast than Burundi. Burundi is very landlocked, even more so than Rwanda is. That being said, I was on a lake, right? I was on Lake Tanganyika. I think that the fish coming from the lake was fresh, but it just wasn't cooked well. So every time that I had fish in Burundi, they were overcooking it. So I was getting it grilled, I was getting it fried, and they were overcooking it every time so that the meat was very, very dry. Not only was the meat dry, they were not seasoning the fish properly. So there was very little taste to it. You know, they weren't putting any pepper on it. They weren't putting anything else on it. It was very just, we fried the fish, we overcooked it, and here it is, enjoy. And so it wasn't the best. I didn't get sick, I will say that. I did not get sick from anything I had in Burundi. The fruits were amazing. I had very good fresh fruits every day when I was there. And I gotta say this, the pineapple that I had in Burundi was the best pineapple I had in my life. And I'm still like raving about the pineapple. Everyone I meet, I will tell them about the pineapple. I didn't actually see where the pineapple was grown in Burundi, but my God, they need to export that pineapple all around the world. The pineapple tastes like candy. It was that sweet and just juicy and just so raw and pure. I gotta say, that was my highlight as far as food goes in Burundi, was the pineapple. The pineapple was mwah. If you wanna invest in something in Burundi, man, I would think pineapple would be, it would fly off the shelves anywhere in the world you export that to. I think if you send it to Kenya, I think if you send it to Uganda, I think it beats all the other pineapple. So, okay, enough about pineapples. The food in general was bad. I went to some Indian restaurants there. It was all right, but it still wasn't what I liked. And I'll say this too, not only do they not season the food very well, they put a load of onions on everything. Now, I like onions, but what they do is they take uncooked onions, they slice them, and they pile them on the food, like a ridiculous amount of onions, where you're just looking at like, who wants this many onions? Like, are you being serious? Like, you have to get a knife and scrape all the onions off your plate. So this is another reason why I did not like the food in Burundi. I even went to a French restaurant. Now, mind you, as I said, a lot of the restaurants in Burundi are owned by foreigners. So I will take that into consideration. I'm not trying to bash the local cuisine in Burundi. Like I said, I don't know what you guys are eating at home. Maybe it's really, really good, but I'm talking to what a foreigner or a tourist is going to eat when they're in the country, most of them. So I went to a French-owned restaurant. This is a place, I'm trying to think of the name of the place. Oh man, it's called Hotel something. I can't think of it, but it's a very famous place on Google Maps. You'll see it pop up. It's got loads of reviews. This place has been in business probably since colonialism ended. So probably since the 60s it's been in business, if not since at least the 90s. So it's an establishment. It's gonna be there when I finish making this video. It's gonna be there if you ever visit Burundi. And it was owned by a Frenchman, right? So you would think it would be a very high level of cuisine and, you know, French style, French quality. I even seen the owner when he was there, and the food was not anything special. I won't say it was bad. It was not bad, but it was average. I almost want to say average at best. And the prices were above average. So I had, I believe I had fish again, and I had a dessert, a French dessert. The dessert was no. And the food was meh. You know, it's definitely not a place I would go back to. I definitely expected more based on what the pricing was for the place. So yeah, across the board, I was very disappointed with the food that I had in Burundi. What else have I not covered? I covered the food, I covered the downtown, I covered the pricing. The pricing, I said, is not as cheap as you might expect. The poverty is bad, but it's not as bad as, you know, some of the poverty pimps on YouTube might try and make it seem like everybody is just eating dogs in the street. There was some YouTuber who tried to push that narrative. People are just eating dogs and any dead animal in the street. It's not that bad. Not in the capital, maybe in the countryside. So to speak about Burundian people, in general, I would say the conditions of the country do not reflect the spirit of Burundian people. I have almost nothing but positive things to say about the spirit of Burundian people. I found the Burundians that I interacted with to be quite honest, quite intelligent, very aware of what's going on in the world. I actually had the pleasure to speak with several Burundians who not only were fluent in their local language, they were also fluent in French, and they were fluent in English, and many of them were trying to learn Chinese or a fourth language. So the people of the country are very industrious, very intelligent, in my experience, very capable. I was very impressed with the work ethic of everyone that I ran into, and in a country that's supposedly the poorest in the world, these people were optimistic. I didn't feel that most of the people in Burundi were depressed, like many people in much wealthier countries are suffering from depression or suffering from all this mental health issues. I did not feel like the local people in Burundi were suffering these things. They acknowledge that it's a rough world. They were born into rough circumstances, but they don't use that as an excuse to feel sorry for themselves. I didn't experience more begging in Burundi than I did in other countries that are a little bit wealthier on paper. It was about the same. And I also found that Burundians were very helpful. I didn't feel like I was getting taken advantage of by most people, other than that incident I mentioned at the border. I didn't get stopped by any other officials when I was going about my business in the city, and I was filming. So if anybody would be a target for corruption or police officers singling out someone, it would be the guy who's filming, right? Who's making a spectacle. And 9 times out of 10, I did have people staring just because I have a camera, and that's not something they're used to seeing. But many people would wave or, you know, make room for me so that I had space to film. So that was my general impression of Burundian people. I have nothing bad to say about the people. The people have a great spirit. So now I can speak a little bit about leaving the country. So when I left the country, I went by the airport. And so the airport from Kabando, or pretty much anywhere along the coast, it's not far. It's gonna take you about 20 minutes, could be less, because there's not a lot of traffic in the city. To get to the airport, it's, like I said, about 20 minutes. You can plan for about 20 minutes in your head. Now, the route to the airport is a little bit more expensive than the route to the bus station. Even though it's the same time, about 20 minutes, the fact that it's a road that leads away from the city means that the taxi driver is gonna have a harder time to get a fare coming back into the city, and they're not gonna be able to make stops along the way. So because of that, they're gonna charge you a little bit more for the time that they're gonna lose on the round trip, right? But that being said, I don't think you're gonna spend more than, I think it was $12 to get to the airport from my hotel. So very reasonable price, maybe even a little bit less depending on what the exchange rate is gonna be, because I'm saying dollars when I'm giving prices. but I was actually paying in the local currency. Now, when you first pull up to the airport, you're gonna stop, and the taxi driver is actually gonna get out of the car. And there is actually a checkpoint before you get into the airport and a conveyor belt outside of the airport for you to put your luggage through. And there's a guard, monitoring this whole process. So I was expecting I was gonna have to get out of the taxi and grab my luggage, put it on the conveyor belt, like what happens in Rwanda at the airport in Kigali. But no, here, the taxi driver actually got out, picked up my heavy backpack, not my backpack, picked up my heavy luggage and put it on the conveyor belt. And actually he did, he grabbed my backpack too. He picked that up and put that on the thing as well. So, he earned the money that I paid for him to take me to the airport above what it would cost to go to the bus station. He earned the money. Very pleasant guy, very relaxed, chill. We talked as much as we could with the language barrier, but I used a little bit of my French, and he was happy to converse with me. So after that process, he takes everything back out of the conveyor belt, puts it back into the taxi. Then you actually enter the airport parking lot. This is before the parking lot. So now you're in the parking lot, pull right up. It's a very, very, very small airport. They only have two airlines, I believe, that fly out of there, and that is Ugandan Air and I believe Ethiopian Air. I believe those are the only ones that fly out of Bujumbura Airport. The airport is kind of unique because it was modeled after huts. So if you can see in the video, the airport has a dome type structure. It's got these different domes to kind of reflect the village life of the people. And it's cool. It really stands out. If you've been around the world, you've been to almost 70 or around 70 countries like myself, you've seen every kind of airport, and I've never seen an airport constructed with a local ethnic sensibility in mind. So that was interesting. So once you get inside the airport, or actually before you get inside the airport, so we did the first check to enter the premises of the airport. Now to get inside the building of the airport, there's another check. There's a military guy. He's gonna look at your passport, and he's gonna do a very quick scan of your luggage. You're gonna enter, there's a corridor, but then that's where you get another thorough check of your luggage. So another woman is gonna look at your passport again, make sure you have a flight. Then you've got another conveyor belt. You're gonna take off your belt and everything. You're gonna physically go through the security check again. This is before you even get into the check-in terminal. So after that, now you're finally clear, and you're gonna go up to the check-in. It's probably gonna be a very short line because, as I said, there's only two airlines and they don't fly at the same time. And the planes are very small planes. They're not the larger planes. So after a quick wait, you are going to go in, check in your baggage. The people were very polite. It was very smooth dealing with them. So after that, you are going to pass again through another check. Now, I will say there's no air conditioning in this airport. So if you're flying around noon, 1, 2, 3, it's going to be extremely hot. I didn't mention this before, but in general, Bujumbura is a lot hotter than Kigali. Expect it to be around 85 degrees average on any given day. So just have that in mind, pack with that in mind. And I didn't mention this before, but I should have, but mosquitoes. Prepare for mosquitoes if you're gonna be anywhere near the lake, which most people are gonna be staying near the lake. The mosquitoes are vicious. They are intense. It's probably one of the most intense places that I've been for mosquitoes. So you wanna make sure you have your spray. With the spray, you're cool. Also, long sleeves will help as well. And when you're spraying, do not just think, okay, I'm gonna do my ankles, I'm gonna do my wrists. No, they will attack you on your hand. If you've got veins in your hand, they will land on your hand and just, go start drinking out of that. So make sure you spray your hands as well. Any exposed skin after sundown, expect mosquitoes to try to look for it, okay? So prepare for the intense mosquitoes and the heat when you're in this capital city of Bujumbura. So after that, you've got your ticket, you're waiting to board the plane. Now you have another check. There's going to be a woman. She's going to check your passport. She's going to let you go forward. And you're going to have to get stamped out of Burundi through immigration. So, and the guy says, try again. He said it in English. You can tell that he's not comfortable speaking English. And I was like, excuse me? He said, like, go back and try again. And I'm like, okay, but my flight is leaving in 40 minutes. Like, what do you mean try again? And so I go back and I'm confused. And so there's another woman, not the one who looked at my passport. There's a young lady. She looks like she's about 20 years old, very young, not even wearing a uniform or anything, so very informal. I wasn't sure if she was another passenger. And I said to her, like, is this what I'm supposed to do? Are we waiting for the other woman to come back? And she said, no, I got this. I said, are you immigration? She said, yeah. And I was like, okay. She looked very, very young. Like I said, dressed very casually. So didn't have a badge or anything. So I was a little bit skeptical handing this young woman my passport, but I said, you know, when in Bujumbura, do as in Bujumbura. So I gave it to her. She pulls up something on her phone and she said, oh, okay, you know, you need to check out. And I said, okay, no one told me this before. No one told me this at the border. But she starts the process and she's asking for my details, going through the app on the phone, and she's typing everything to get me checked out of the country. And so I'm asking her, I'm saying, you know, no one told me about this. Is this normal? Does this happen a lot? And she says, yeah, this is a new process. They only came out with this about 2 weeks ago. And of course, you have a new system. It doesn't work very well. So she tries, it takes her about 10 minutes. Finally, we're able to send something to my email. I have to confirm I got the email, and then I'm able to leave the country. Very polite young woman, very capable, very intelligent, spoke English very well, even though she was shy about it, and, you know, obviously spoke a couple other languages. And so then I try again. I head back to the very serious looking official. I hand him my passport. He looks at it and he says, okay, you can go. Stamps it this time. Now I'm ready. So I'm heading out of the immigration area. Yet again, another baggage check. So I put my bag through another conveyor belt. You know, the guy working the x-ray machine, he looks super bored. And it comes out again. So I will tell you that this airport is very safe. This airport is safer than most banks. It's safer than most national monuments in many countries. This airport is super duper safe. So I'm ready to go. I'm in the waiting area to departures, right? And there are very few people waiting. It's about 30 more minutes I have left. There is one very small, I guess, cafe there. I wouldn't even call it like a full cafe. I think they just have maybe some croissants. You can get some coffee, but it's not like a separate structure. There's no cooking going on there that I saw. I don't think you can get a meal. So if you're hungry, you want to eat before you get to the airport, you're not going to be able to have a full meal while you're there waiting. Another thing I will say is, do not show up to this airport very early. If you get there like I did, about an hour and a half before your flight, that's perfect. Even though I said you have to go through security check after security check after security check, it goes very quickly because, as I said, it's a small airport, very small planes, very few flights. So you're not gonna get into a situation where you're waiting in line behind 30 people to take off your belt and go through the airport. Every time that I got through one of those checks, I was the only person going through those checks. So have that in mind. So now finally, they're ready to board, and I depart Bujumbura, Burundi. It was quite an experience. I don't feel like I'm an expert on this country. I don't pretend to be. I'm just giving you the experience of your typical tourist who's going to spend about a week in the country. These are the things that I noticed. And I don't want to end on just doom and gloom. The experience there, I got a lot out of it, even though it may seem like I didn't like the country. I feel like every country has some valuable lessons, has something that you can take away from it. And I'm definitely not on this channel to bash Africa in any way. So I hope it doesn't come across that way. I'm just letting you guys know what the real is when you get on the ground. I'm not going to sugarcoat things, but I'm also not going to hype things up and pretend that everything is what it should be. Now, there were some other highlights that I didn't mention about this country. So if you're staying in Bujumbura, there's a zoo called Musée Vivant en français, in French, which I believe translates to Living Museum. And so this is a very small zoo, but one special thing about this zoo is that you're able to actually get up close and personal with the animals. So unlike most zoos, you just see the animal in the cage and that's it. No, not at this zoo. In this zoo, you've got crocodiles that you can actually sit on and touch. You've got snakes that you can wrap the snake around your shoulders. You've got chimpanzees that you can not only look at and feed, you can actually hold the chimpanzee and take a photo with them. This is unlike the vast majority of zoos that you're going to find on planet Earth. So if this is something that appeals to you, by all means, go there, experience it. There was actually a video done by the Unapologetic Nomads. They're a group of African Americans who travel extensively in Africa. They've been to more African countries than me at this point. Shout out to them. I like their videos, I like their content. Keep doing your thing. So if you want to see what that looks like, they've done a way better video on it than I could do. And you can really get to see what that whole experience is like. If you like animals, if you like to touch animals. Me, that's not my thing. I like animals, but I'm not all about touching them. But if that's you, you want to see what that experience is like, absolutely check out their video. And if you're in Bujumbura, check out that museum, that zoo. It's not expensive. It's, I believe, under $15 to visit. And the price varies whether you're a local or you're a foreigner. And you may have to pay a little bit extra to have that up close and personal experience with the animals. But I'm sure it's well worth it because you can't do that almost anywhere else. Also, I didn't mention that there are some really chill resort type setups along the beaches. So if you're leaving Kabando and you go up the coast headed towards the Congo, but not leaving the city, still in Bujumbura, but heading in that direction towards the rural province of Bujumbura, along the coast on the beach, there are some resorts set up. One of the beaches I went to, I forgot the name of it. One of them is Zion Beach, and there are some other beaches. I'm gonna hopefully have some footage I can show you guys as well of what that beach looks like, but very chill place to relax. Some people actually get into the lake and swim on the beach. There's some sand there, and it's just a resort vibe. They have pools, in-ground pools right in the resort, and they've got food service. You can see the sunset, beautiful view. They have music, entertainment, and in these little resorts, these private areas, you can really see what the moneyed class of Bujumbura is like. So if you're just getting that one view from certain non-African YouTubers, if everyone here is poor, and you want to see what some of the upper middle class and well-to-do Bujumburan locals look like, what the vibe is like, you can see that for sure in these resorts. There were people pulling up in Mercedes, people pulling up, like I said, in three-piece suits. People have weddings in some of these resorts. So a lot of money there, a lot of security. It's a completely different vibe. So it would behoove you, if you're in the country, to see both sides, get the full picture, and hopefully I can present a little bit of that to you. And if you're in the country, you can experience both sides of it. So with that being said, if you made it this far, you're a trooper, because it's just me talking and giving you the real. So I appreciate you. Again, like the video, it helps out, and it's free. Go ahead and subscribe. I appreciate you, and until next time, this is your man, Jay Focus, reminding you to stay focused.
Of yours, this thing is a life that's better than yours.